Welcome, my fellow wannabes. Welcome to the show. You are listening to The Wannabe Critic, and I am Gabriel Fast, one of your hosts. And joining me is Caleb Henley and Mikey Collins via Zoom, because that's how we do things around here. I'm going to throw it to Caleb. Caleb, how you feeling, man?
Man, life is good, as the world starts to crumble around us, just trying to, have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you drinking there?
This is just some cheap whiskey. I mean, I don't even remember what it's actually called, but yeah, it's fine. It's good.
Well, there you go. Mikey, how you feeling, bro? Fine, as per usual.
Yeah.
Mikey seems to be the only one that ever has like any technical difficulty. Like is the person that can only ever pretty much, they're the only one that ever gets lag on their end for some reason, which is kind of funny. So hopefully we don't have any interference tonight, but you do what you can do, and that's the name of the game. Honestly, though, I was going through our Court of Owls discussion that we had not too long ago, and it wasn't that bad because after I chopped it up, it made it sound like you were right there with us. So the magic of editing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are real life people that have jobs and lives, and we don't podcast for a living. So if you hear a loud noise on my end, it's my wife mowing the lawn, and that's just the name of the game sometimes, and that's all you can do. But guys, the world is kind of, as Caleb kind of mentioned it, the world is crumbling a little bit around us. Not only do we have the global pandemic, but now we have quite a controversial thing happening in the world, and it's good to be able to just sit down and kind of escape, kind of all the injustice and the unrest that we're seeing in the world. So if you are out there, everybody, please stay safe. We want everyone to be safe and just try your best to stay safe, please. That's all we can really say. But
don't be racist.
Yeah, don't be racist, because that's the thing. That's the whole thing, is systemic racism. If you don't believe that it's a thing, you're blind and you don't see it, because it's there. And we're not here to talk politics. We're not here to talk about all of that. But the fact of the matter is I have experienced it my entire life, and I know you guys probably have too in some way, shape, or form. And I have friends who are black, and I can't imagine how they must be feeling right now. So, don't be a racist. Don't be on the negative side of things, is all we can say, and stay safe. But ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, this is the Wannabe Critic. This is your weekly stop for diversity. Anything from random topics to comic reviews to album reviews to interviews to movie and TV show reviews, like what we're doing today. We're reviewing Fast and Furious. In our constant efforts and attempts to make quality content, we have branched off into several podcast feeds, which are available to you right now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as some other, some smaller platforms like, not smaller platforms, but more common platforms like Stitcher and Overcast, things like that. If you can't find these podcast feeds on your podcast feed of choice, I apologize, but we're trying to be on the most popular platforms possible. But we have Game Club, where we talk video games a lot, in-depth video game reviews. We also have Storytime, an in-house narrative that we've been working on as a collaborative that we're going to be releasing bi-weekly. And then also me and my lovely wife have A Guy and His Wife, which is a show where, very much like this, we sit down and review things, but it's me and my wife. So that's a lot of fun. But gentlemen, we're not here to talk about that crap. We're not here to plug other shows, all the entire show. We're not here to talk about that whole thing, but it has to be done, and I prefer to just get it done and out of the way. We're here to talk about Fast and Furious 6, or Furious 6, Fast and Furious 6. What is it technically? Is it Furious 6 or Fast and Furious 6?
I think it's Fast and Furious 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I was watching the credits roll, when I was watching it today, and it said Furious 6 on it. I'm like, I'm a little confused. Like, the branding needs to be a little bit different, but I could be wrong. But did you guys, so Caleb, you watched it about a week ago, yeah?
Yeah. And I think it's still fairly fresh in my mind. I mean, this is a type of movie I feel like it's weird because it can grab you in certain spots, and there's some parts of it that are incredibly memorable, but there's other parts of it are extremely forgettable.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd. But
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that statement. Mikey, did you watch it today, or when did you get a chance to watch it?
Just finished it before we started it.
Yeah, the exact same thing happened to me. I try and keep it as close to as close as I can to podcast day, watching the thing. And this was actually the first one. Emma had to go do something and she came in halfway. And it was kind of funny how almost an hour into this movie, she shows up. And I was like, why don't you come watch the rest of it with me? And she's like, I don't know. There's probably too much that has happened. And I'm like, I can literally explain it to you in 3 sentences, everything that's happened, and you'll be just as caught up as I am. And she looks over at me like 15 minutes of watching, and she goes, I'm confused. Like, I'm a little confused as to what's going on. Like, I think I need to watch from the beginning. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just as confused as you are, honestly. Having a hard time keeping up my dang self. And without getting too much into the review yet, let's go ahead and do the ritual of sorts. Mikey is leaving the room. I don't understand. Oh, he's letting his dog in. Okay, I see what's happening. Let's do the ritual. Caleb, do you like this movie?
Yeah.
Stuff. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Mikey, do you like this movie?
Considering that I skipped over probably half of it, I'm going to say no and yes.
Okay.
At the same time.
All right. I'm kind of right as usual. There's one of us that's usually right smack dab in the middle, and I'm right there with both of you guys. And as we're going to kind of talk about this whole thing. So let's give a brief overview, just really, really fast. So we leave off of Fast 5, which we kind of had mixed feelings about, and we come into Fast 6. And I would very much say that this is kind of a continuation of the last movie we just watched, in some ways, while trying to kind of tie the rest of the franchise together. And there's only so much you can do with something that has a mythos such as this. And I think this is whenever, we saw a little bit of like how ridiculous can we make this kind of in the last movie. And we're really starting to see it kind of get out of hand in this movie. And I do have to preface this review by saying that I watched the first Avengers movie right before I watched this movie today, because me and Emma are reviewing Avengers tonight. And it was a little weird kind of making that transition. But the overall story of Fast and Furious 6 is we're getting the team back together because there's another team that's like the evil twins of everyone else in the Fast family and the Fast and Furious family, not my family. And now we have to bring this evil team down in a Battle of the Bands style fashion is kind of what I thought of as I'm watching this movie. Does that about sum it up, Caleb?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That's literally about as far as the plot actually goes. Added in some like random Letty nonsense, but that's basically it.
Yeah, I think what you just said is pretty good. The Letty nonsense. And my thing is, me and Emma were talking about this. Emma was like, did Michelle Rodriguez want out and then want back in, or what's going on? I'm like, I have no idea what the story is. On the real part of things. I think that there was an outcry for, after Fast and Furious came out, there's probably a big outcry for Letty. And it's like, okay, well, how can we bring her back? And now we're seeing kind of Han get the similar treatment of there's such an outcry for Han and everyone loves Han and all this stuff. I don't know. At what point do we just say, okay, I'm taking points away because this is stupid? Like, I know you're trying to be stupid, but there's got to be a line somewhere. Go ahead, Caleb.
This is the line.
I was just going to say, by the same metric, I think what these movies are really just trying to be is, it's funny you bring up the Avengers, because I think they're just trying to be that. They're trying to be like comic book superhero movies without being comic book superhero movies. But one thing that comics do, as little bit as I know about comics, is that they do resurrect their characters quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I think that is some semi-forgivable, but it is like critically probably not the best thing in the world. And that's one of the reasons why comic book movies too probably aren't like critically always the best thing ever, but one of the reasons. But yeah, I think it's a little bit more forgivable when you look at it in that light.
Yeah, I like what you're saying here. And Mikey, I feel like you're probably on the opposite end of the spectrum where you're like, you got to draw the line somewhere. I mean, what's kind of like your, so you say you skipped half the movie. We're talking about skipping scenes, or are we talking about fast forwarding through the movie? I mean, what are we talking about here?
Like fast forwarding like through 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, like chunks. Cause I'm just like, I can literally hold the fast forward button and be like, okay, got it. Got it. Got it. Like,
Yeah. There's not a lot.
but
There's
the only parts I stopped for were like action scenes or like, I don't know. Just nothing made me want to lift off of the fast forward button, even though I knew what was going on and I haven't seen this movie in years.
yeah.
You know?
One, it was
So,
probably that thing of like, oh
I don't
crap,
know,
I need to watch
just
this.
something that got to me.
Yeah, and I could see how it would be
Yeah.
one the thing of like you run out of time and you're like, I gotta watch this, and you know what, I might have to run the show late or whatever. But then you're like, well, let's see if I can kind of gather what's going on. I've done that in some of the Star Wars movies we watched. Where I'm like, God, there's 45 minutes left of this movie. I thought it was 2 hours, but it's like 2.5 hours, and I totally get where you're coming from. But you get the sense of exactly what's happening, and it is kind of funny that this movie does that. You can, I'm pretty sure I could do that exact same thing. But let's kind of get into the the review process a little bit, and let's talk about the good. One thing that I really liked about this movie was the directing, as far as like the cinematography. I really like the aesthetic that London had to bring, because whenever we're getting the car chase scenes, I feel like I'm watching a Nolan movie in those moments. And for the first time, and I can't remember how long, the bad guy actually is cool. Like I thought the villains were very definite. Like, these are bad guys. They don't mess with them. Like, they have something, and there's a threat because they have the exact same thing, if not maybe a little bit more than what our heroes have to bring. And it very much does feel like, oh crap, kind of like how Tyrese says in the movie, there are evil twins, are what we're going up against. And I really liked that part of it. That's about it. As far as like bringing out like things that I really, really enjoyed, or things that I thought were worth mentioning. Caleb, can you did you like the way this movie looked? And I have other tiny things to say about, the good, but I think that was the most standout thing, is we have a definitive villain. And, even though the tank scene is ridiculous, in that moment, it shows us like, this is a bad person. Like, this is a very bad person. And I get what's happening. And then they follow up that sequence with, us kind of getting threatened. The characters we know are being threatened. I'm like, okay, this is a good bad guy. Like, I like this. But Caleb, please go.
Yeah, so things I like about the movie. Love London. Think it's incredible. It's an awesome city. I think it works really, really well for movies in general, just because there's so many iconic spots in it. It's almost like New York City in a way, where there's just so much recognizable about it. And I think it just works really well as being the main setting for this movie. I love the flip cars. Those are something incredibly unique in a movie that's about all sorts of different cars. After a while, it can start to almost go stale. But the flip cars are something kind of unique and cool, and I really like that a lot. My favorite scene in this movie might be the scene where Hobbs and Ludacris's character go to the car auction, and they are very much racially profiled, and this very, we can just say racist guy thinks they're the help, and then tells them why they can't afford it, and then they end up just buying all of the cars. I kind of like the power move of that. Like, that guy was being a butt, and yeah, he deserved that. And then they take his clothes off of his back. It's a good move. And I think, other than that, the thing I enjoy about this movie is just, I feel like this is when they're really leaning into the just, let's be as ridiculous as we possibly can with these movies. There are a lot, especially towards the latter half of this movie, like the tank scene, and then of course the runway scene, that is just absolutely so ridiculous, and just no possible way of this ever happening, where it goes in from a point where you have to almost stop looking at it critically and just start being like, well, I guess this is what we're doing now. Like, physics don't exist, logic doesn't exist. Nothing. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Just sit back and watch, because this is ridiculous. We know it's ridiculous, but here you go.
Yeah.
And I think I am one of those people that kind of appreciates that, because I find it just kind of hilarious in a way.
Yeah, and I think I feel like to your kind of what you're saying, like the departure from the last movie, it's like you kind of feel like, okay, this is the best it gets. Or this is as good as it's ever going to get, pretty much. Getting kind of the best of the ridiculousness, and then also getting the best of kind of what we kind of know and love. And then it takes those, okay, this is ridiculous, and kind of turns it up to 1,000, in this movie. And I find it hilarious that in the runway scene, they somehow managed to pull it off right before the runway ends. And I didn't really notice. And I'm like, it's like fire, and Dom does the barrel roll thing at the end, and I'm like, there's fire, and everyone's all worried. And I don't remember anything about this movie. And Emma's watching it. I'm like, please don't walk through the fire. Sure enough, starts walking through the fire, and Emma and I both burst out laughing. Like, whenever the car launches itself out of the front of the plane, like we're both like, we're laughing, like this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But it goes back to junk food, but it just very much, in that moment, it kind of feels to me, it's like, okay, this isn't Fast and Furious anymore. This is something completely different. And I kind of think, and I can't wait to hear what Mikey has to say. I feel like if you took the WWE and said, hey, let's make some fast car chase movies, that's what we get from here on out. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like a giant wrestling match where somehow some of the acting has no business being as good as it is. And then you have just the most over-the-top, fabricated storyline. And it's like, okay, you get, I think you get what I'm trying to say. But Mikey, I know you have a very articulated response because you've just been sitting there nodding and listening. Please elaborate. With the good first, and then we'll tear this movie to shreds. But yeah, good.
I was gonna say, yeah. I do have good things to say.
Okay, good.
So, the spin-off movie that we never got, that I really think we should have got, Han and his girl.
Yeah.
What the heck? Like, they did a complete 180 for me in this movie, because the last movie, hated it. I don't know why anybody shipped them or anything, but this movie, dude, like, they totally set you up for the ending with her.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's awesome. The best relationship in Fast and Furious by far, in my opinion. Like, I love Brian and Mia, and I love Dom and Letty, classic. But
yeah.
I mean, come on.
From a chemistry standpoint, the
awesome.
Chemistry is
and then,
for real there.
Dude, yeah. They got backstory. You everybody has connections to Han, and then you're like, oh, that's Han's girl. Oh, dude, I can't remember her name for the whole life.
Giselle.
Like, if you put a gun to my head, I could. Is that her name? I don't even know. But and then yeah, and then the relationship. This is the realest, besides Fast and Furious 1, that I feel Dom and Brian and Letty's relationship is. Mia, she's a bad actress. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
Like, I never feel like she's sincere. But those three, Dom, Letty, and Brian, that feels good. Like, you can tell there's history there, and they all three love each other, and like
they're friends in real life. Like, you can feel the friendship. Yeah.
And I feel like this is some of like Paul Walker's best acting in
Period.
this entire series.
I agree. Especially so with the Braga scene. Like,
oh, dude, so good.
Yeah, I remember. So yeah, I remember thinking like. Well, and we use good subjectively a little bit, because for Fast and Furious and compared to what we've seen him do in the past, it's very much like whenever he thinks that Mia is done for, and he's calling Mia, and he just straight up walks right up to Sean, just punches him right in the face, and like that was one of the best moments in the movie, in my opinion. I think what Caleb kind of hit on the head, like with the most memorable things. There's a handful of really memorable things, and there's a handful of really not. But please continue.
For sure, yeah. And then probably the last good thing that I can think of is Letty's freaking 71 Interceptor. That is a dope car. That's probably one of my favorite cars in this entire series. Like that, and then GTR, that car, and then the Charger, and I'm like, yeah, that's my top 3 for sure.
Yeah, that car looked a little. I was like, I've never seen that before. That's pretty dope.
So dope, dude. It's a really cool car. But that, and then, oh man, I have so many other problems though. The problems outweigh the good of this movie for me so much. But I don't know. I love to hate on these. So
I know you do. Well, in here, let's do this then. What I want to do is I want to try a little experiment. I'm going to put you on the fly.
Okay.
I am going to let you kind of lead the bad here, and I'll interject when I can. It's kind of a free for all right here, so you go for it. Anyone that wants to say something, if Caleb, if you interject, you guys have it back and forth. I'm just gonna let you guys have it out. But I want to try this out and see what happens. But Mikey, I want you to take the floor. Go for it.
Okay. Low blow, 10-minute long runway. Just get that out of the way. What the heck is at least 10 minutes at full speed? Like, okay, and I know that's been beaten to death. But what, Caleb?
I was just gonna say, man, 10 minutes is really undershooting it. That's at least a 30-minute long runway.
No, I timed it. I timed that crap, bro. At 60, at least, let's call it 60 miles an hour, at least, for 10 minutes. What?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna, since Caleb's trying to contain himself, here's my theory, because I'm watching this and I'm like, there's no way that they thought that this was a good idea to try and sell us this. And here's my only thing that I could think of. And, you know, no one kind of does these things of you're being sold a point of reference from multiple scenarios going on at the same time. So the points of action that you're watching, that's all happening simultaneously. So if they're trying to sell that, I could see that if that's what they're trying to do. The point is trying to sell it is the only thing. And here's why it doesn't work. Is because 2 or 3 points of reference are fine. But like 5 or 6, that's when it starts getting a little bit dicey. And then you start to see things unfold. And it's like, okay, so this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So how do you start lining up that timeline of how all of those things are happening at the same time? You lose track. And then it does feel like there's no way this runway is this long. I don't think it was ever supposed to really meant to feel that way. But it does, because we have the entire crew. You know, we have 6 different perspectives going on at the same time. And that's why it doesn't work. But I really, after watching this and really trying to pay attention, I really think that's what they were trying to sell, is all of these things are happening simultaneously. But to us, you know, for the average person, they're like, man, this is a really long runway. Like, do they think this was a good idea? Shoot. But yeah, no, Mikey, I like you. It's not a low blow. It's a good critique. And I think what I just said kind of makes it that way. Because if they were trying to sell you that Nolanization a little bit, it didn't land, and it looks stupid is what it looks like. So Caleb, you've composed yourself. I feel like you have something to say, please.
No, yeah, I think what you're saying too, because I was trying to justify it this last time that we watched through it, and I think what they were shooting for is, in the perfect world, the viewer would understand that all of these things are happening simultaneously, whether, you know, it's from, you know, Tyrese Gibson's point of view, or Ludacris's, or Mia's, or Brian's, or Dom's, or whatever. It's all happening simultaneously, flawlessly, to where, okay, this would be more realistic. And instead of a 60-mile long runway, you have a 10-mile long runway. But the problem with that is a 10-mile long runway still isn't realistic. Like, it's never going to be realistic.
Yeah.
And I think that they must have pitched this and ran with it, and like gotten to a point, and probably at some point thought, oh crap, there's no way we could possibly ever make this believable. But it's going to look so cool, and it's going to be so ridiculous, and it's going to be such a crazy set piece that we think we can get away with it, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what kind of ended up happening is the writers probably just kind of wrote themselves into a corner, and then they had to go through with this, and then they're like, well, crap, we're just gonna make this as cool as possible.
Yeah.
And I think they executed it okay. I think what they should have done to really lean into the curve, and Gabe, you kind of hinted at it earlier, was at the end when the plane is crashed, it should not have been at the end of the runway. There should have been like 50 more miles of runway. Like down, they should have been like halfway down the runway at that point, just to really lean into it.
Right.
Like it would have been so much more funnier. Yeah, because to end at the end of the runway is like, well, come on. Like, is there ever supposed to be any sort of like,
logic?
Is that ever supposed to be a factor? Is how long the runway is?
Yeah.
No, this should have been infinite. And I think that would have been kind of almost funnier and better. Because at the end, when they showed like the end, it's kind of like, but come on. Like,
yeah.
Really? You want us to buy that?
Right. That's exactly. And here's the thing. We kind of touched on this in a little bit in the outset. And Mikey, I'm kind of taking it away from you for a second. We talked about the Avengers. I watched the Avengers first, today because we're reviewing it on A Guy and His Wife, where you can listen to that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and other certain podcast feeds. Sorry, I had to do that real quick. Here's the thing. We have very set in place rules when we watch something like the Avengers, to where if we know something is inauthentic for 1 second, we don't buy it because we're like, that breaks the rules, which the Marvel Cinematic Universe does not do that very often. This has no rules. This franchise that has turned into the point to where apparently there's no rules. Mikey, I feel like you want to say something. If you're disagreeing, you better come out swinging. Let's hear it.
I heard, okay, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it kind of hit they hit the nail on the head for me, because they said something and I was like, that makes total sense. So the first 3 movies are car movies. Like, they're about the cars. The rest of the movies are heist movies.
Yeah.
That's all that they are.
Yeah.
And they're superhero movies. Like, that's what they are. Like, after the 3rd one, it's not about the cars. Yes, it has cars in it, but it's not about the cars, Yeah. So, I mean, that's when I'm just like, it's a different series at that point.
Yeah.
My opinion. Yes, it has characters, but it's not. The rules have changed. That you can't hold it to the same rules as the first 3.
Now, okay, now, why I understand what you're saying. Here's my argument, or not my argument, my rebuttal to that. If I was to be debating with someone, which I'm not, we're having a conversation. My thing is whenever we've had 5 movies up to this point that have relatively shared the same rules, and then all of those rules, every single one of them almost gets turned upside down on the next movie, there's no progression. It's like, what just happened? Caleb, please go ahead.
I just have a counterpoint to your counterpoint. Do you think the rules are the same for Iron Man versus Avengers Endgame? Are the rules the same for that?
I feel like, well, that's a good point. That's a good argument, because
my point is like a series can progress over time.
Yeah.
And as more and more factors are brought in, and as characters progress, things change in a series. I remember walking out of the theater with Iron Man with my dad, and my dad saying that this was one of the first superhero movies that he liked because it was realistic.
Yeah.
And if you went into Avengers Endgame looking for realism, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing, is like with series like this, where there's tons and tons of movies and they're drawn out over decades, things are going to change and things are going to progress. And I think to look for that not to happen, or for things to stay true over that long of a time, might be completely realistic.
Yeah. No, and that's fair. And that's what's so great about these types of conversations is, it has to change. That being said, I feel like, we're talking about something like the MCU. I feel like a very certain set of rules that are given. You think about the Iron Man movies versus like even the Captain America movies and the Thor movies. You have more exposition, you have more backstory, you have more rules to play with in those types of stories. So to say like, is it different? Yeah, it is different. And you make a good counter argument. My thing is like, whenever we do take that ridiculousness that was kind of been sprinkled in the past few movies, and then the next one, it's like, okay, we're gonna drop, you know, an A-bomb on it now and turn it up. That's whenever it starts to feel, it feels ingenuine. It is what it feels like. Whereas the MCU feels that they take it to the next level, but they also follow the rules that have been set in place before this. So, you know, and this is, you know, kind of a cool subject to talk about, you know, in these things, but I don't know. There's so many moments in this movie where I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Yes, it's entertaining. There's lots of explosions. This is fun. I'm enjoying a lot of what I'm watching, but something's off, and I have never felt that. Which we're talking about two different types of craftsmanship, you know, in the MCU and in the Fast Saga. But I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I both. Oh, Mikey disagrees. Two different. You don't think that there's two different types of storytelling there?
Dude, at this point, no.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Well, I'm not talking about Fast 6. I'm talking about what we've had before versus, you know, I don't know. It just feels inconsistent is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the progression is just off the charts, not right at all.
Yeah, and I don't want to give the listeners this pretense of like I don't like these movies, because I do. I enjoy watching these movies, and I obviously enjoy talking about them, or else we wouldn't be doing this. It gets into a whole other can of worms, you know, when we start talking about like what rules exist, like what's consistent, what's not consistent. And, you know, like maybe we should do a deep dive sometime on the MCU, you know. Oh, wait, we do over at A Guy and His Wife, like I mentioned before. But no, those were good points, and those were good counter arguments. And I do agree with both of you. And I also, it's kind of weird. Like I feel like I can agree with both of you and also still think that my point kind of fits in somewhere. It's like a big pie chart some way. But we're still kind of talking about the bad, right? Like all the things that aren't really great. And I think Mikey hit one that kind of got me. Mia is like plastic surgeryed up in this movie. Like she doesn't even look like Mia anymore.
It's different every movie.
It really is. It's sad.
Like every movie.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you used to be like my childhood heartthrob, and now you're not. But Mikey, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Go for it.
Yeah. You know what is consistent in Fast and Furious? Harpoon guns. What? Why?
With NOS.
Why?
We're gonna put a can of NOS in there now.
God. I don't understand the harpoon guns. Why is that part of the plan?
Yeah. Why is that ever a part of the plan? We're gonna keep this plane anchored down with some harpoon guns.
5 cars. I'm pretty sure that plane would still take off with cars hanging off of it. Like, I know how. Like, I don't know the math, but I'm pretty sure. Caleb,
just step on the toes, bro. You have seniority here. You just do what you want.
I just want to ask, what does the NOS do to those harpoon guns that makes them so much?
That's exactly that's my thing. Like it's like we got to find a way to make these things like more mobile. And it's like, what? Like, I don't know.
That's like a turbo onto one of them. Does that help?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing?
Yeah, or one of my favorite parts of this movie kind of takes up that thing that Mikey talked about in Too Fast, Too Furious with the electric tridents. And then whenever they shoot those probes out on the cars and like disable one wheel, I was like, what? Yeah. What is that supposed to be? Is that a thing? I'm like, can you do that? And I mean, I don't know, like it was just so, I was like, well, I was really enjoying that chase until that moment. And I'm like, man, that really just pulled me right out of it. That kind of sucks, but that's funny, Mikey. Harpoon guns. What else?
Okay, so this goes back to what you were saying about, you know, the plane crashes, Dom comes shooting out of the front of the plane. I've said it, and I'll probably say it again. Why can't anybody drive in a freaking straight line in this movie? They can jump bridges and land on the front bumper and take off in a straight line, but he can't come shooting. He has to drift it. He has to power slide the car in front of the plane, and then do 8 flips and walk out of the fire. Straight line. You're in a race car. Just floor it and go. You don't have to drift. No drifting. I love Tokyo Drift, but why? Why is that thing?
You're in a race car. Mush.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight.
Dude. Like,
Oh
That's
my
probably
god.
like my biggest, like one of my biggest ones. The rest of the stuff I have is like, I don't know. I mean, it's not small, but like the Dom Letty midair tackle, they
Oh
both
my
died.
god. Yeah.
What is that? What is that? Like,
Yep.
That's my wife's favorite part of this movie. She
are you
loves it.
serious?
It's so stupid and ridiculous, and
They
she
would
like,
both be dead.
yeah, no, absolutely, it's retarded. Oh, and the idea of the Mustang anchoring the tank
Oh my god, yeah.
after all of the destruction that the tank has caused and it being invincible, that this, little Mustang that's balled up into a little crumple of metal is
Not
going
just
to
Must-
anchor that tank somehow. Just does not make any sense.
Not just the Mustang. What is that wire made of? Like what?
Unicorns.
Good lord, adamantine.
Vibranium. It's a vibranium.
Crossover.
Yeah, the biggest crossover in history. It will make it happen, guys. Oh my god, that's amazing. Dude, yeah, you're making, and that's the thing I'm trying to say is, I feel like there's nitpicks in every movie. There's going to be nitpicks. They're just throwing them like fastballs at us in this movie all the time, and it's like, yeah, if you don't like it, you can get out. Like, we're gonna make millions off of this.
Exactly.
There is like there's another franchise that we've already talked about before, where it's like the nitpicks you have, they're not just flaunting them. You know what I mean? It's like there's a certain set of rules that, and I don't know, like, oh, man, I know that we're in for a treat with the next movie, because I know the next movie is going to be even worse whenever it comes to that type of stuff. I do feel like there was something else I was going to say, kind of negative. Oh, I don't buy. Caleb said like, or maybe it was Mikey, about, Dom, Letty, and Brian, about how they, all love each other and all this other stuff. I don't really buy the Dom and Letty thing in this movie as much. It just doesn't really work for me. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. I'm kind of over it, honestly, at this point. By this point in the series, I'm kind of over it. Go for it, Caleb.
You should have stayed with the Brazilian chick.
Yeah.
That's
because she's that Brazilian chick, like,
Easy.
she's pretty. That's all I'm going to say. She's a very attractive female. And I feel like he almost had more chemistry with her than he did with Letty. I mean, I don't know. Like, it makes me sad.
Bro, do you remember the scene in Rio when he breaks into her house just to steal a necklace that she stole from him and is wearing of his dead girlfriend?
Yeah, I remember.
Dude, that's weird. Like, there's no chemistry there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I just don't. It's not any better than what we get with him and Letty. Go ahead, Caleb.
Mikey.
Yes.
She's hotter. That's it. That's the whole reason.
That's the whole reason, Mikey.
Caleb!
Shut up. Whatever.
Come on, dude.
That's funny. That is really funny.
Oh, man.
Okay.
I
I
have
don't.
more.
I don't. You have more? Let's keep rolling it out.
I have a lot more. Oh, these are kind of like, I don't know, smaller, I guess. Okay, the ramp Formula One car.
You didn't like that.
Okay, I liked the car. I liked the premise. I think that's dope. Why would they put a manual stick shift column in a Formula One car? That's all paddles, baby, all day. They would literally have to take that and convert it to a manual and put a different, I don't know. That's something that got me. That's just a nitpick thing I had. And then, but the bigger thing for me, like immediately in this movie, they pull up and Mia's having the baby, right?
Yeah.
And what Fantasyland does Dom have the right to give Paul or Brian father advice about a baby? He doesn't have kids. Why is he giving him advice about being a dad? Like, I don't, that just comes back to the thing of like Dom being this like god in Fast and Furious. I'm like, where does he get all this wisdom? Like, when does he experience childbirth?
Yeah. No,
You know?
you're right.
But that's, I mean, it's a nitpick. And then the other little thing is like when when Dwayne the Rock and then Dom are all fighting the bad guy in
the plane. Yeah.
The finishing move that
Yeah.
Dwayne the Rock Johnson does, he jumps like 12 feet in the air
Yeah.
off of just flat ground.
Yeah.
What is that? Like, what is that, dude?
Showbiz is what it is.
God.
Oh my.
Like, come on.
I thought he jumped off of a car. I thought he jumped off of a car or a couple of crates. He jumped.
Dude, he
really?
Like, he punched him and he was like on the ground and just like Superman 12 feet off the ground.
Seriously?
You should just go watch it.
Okay, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not gonna go back and watch it. But okay,
like,
good.
I don't know.
I want to go. I want to.
Those little things.
I wanted to touch on something in the beginning that I noticed that kind of set my palate, for the whole movie, is whenever, the movie tries to trick us into thinking that Dwayne the Rock Johnson is going to be fighting Dom, and we see that bald guy in the room. Like Mikey would say, in what fantasy land can Dwayne the Rock Johnson pick someone up the same size as him and just throw him across the room, pick him up, hold him like what do you call this? Head height? I don't know. Like as high as his head, and just literally just throw him across the room. I was like, yeah, exactly. Showbiz. I'm like, okay, I guess that's where we're going with this now.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was, and we're kind of getting to the nitpicky stuff here. I feel like we already kind of talked about the bigger stuff. Go ahead, Caleb.
One of my nitpicks while we're on this subject, during the first 2/3 of this movie, there's no traffic anywhere in the world. Whether it's in the opening scene of Dom and Brian racing their cars to the hospital, no traffic. If it's in London, one of the biggest cities in the world, super busy, no traffic. The only time there is traffic in this movie is when there's a tank running over all of the innocent people in traffic.
Yeah.
Just incredible stuff.
Yeah, compelling, quite compelling. Yeah. No, man, it's hard. It's really hard because I feel like I was engaged in this movie because of the bad guy. I'm like, this is dope. I love the Formula One stuff. I didn't even pick up on the shifting because at this point, it's kind of like commonplace, in these movies. Didn't even think about it. I don't really know anything about cars, so I kind of missed that. But like the ramping stuff, I was like, this is dope. Like I was buying it, and I liked the bad guy, and it's a shame. And I liked how even they kind of developed the bad guy's crew a little bit. Like we got way more development with that crew than we did with Hobbs. Like it's almost like whenever Hobbs's unit got wiped out, we were almost kind of like, oh, good. Like they were starting to annoy me, Like I liked this better the first time whenever they were in the Ghost Recon. But I don't know. I just feel like this movie, I was excited to watch it. I'm going to put it that way. And it let me down in a lot of ways because it felt wrong. And, I don't know. I don't really have a ton more to say about the movie. I feel like I've pretty much thrown it all out there. Do you guys have anything else that you want to say? I mean, we can, if you bring stuff up, like let's riff off of it. But I mean, I don't have anything else. Caleb, go for it.
I'll just bring out two more little scenes or things that I liked from this movie. One being the scene where Han and Tyrese, I think, are chasing the guy through the subway. And that guy, he beats up all the cops. And then they are like trying to fight this guy together. And they're just getting their butts kicked.
Yeah.
I love that scene just because it's pretty funny. Like they're trying to work together, and there's a point where they're like both like kind of on the ropes, and they're like, "All right, you go, you go," like to each other. I like that scene. It's pretty funny, pretty entertaining. The other one is just it's while they're on the plane at the end, and it's just so ridiculous and so hilarious. It's where Dom launches himself through the air in like the headbutt to save the universe. And he like headbutts that like ginormous like giant guy.
Oh yeah.
It's the dumbest thing ever. He leaps like 20 feet through the air to headbutt this guy. And just it's so dumb and it's so great.
Yeah.
And I love it.
There was one scene that I remember whenever Letty and Dom race each other. Whenever the girl, she's like, This is London. We do what we want, right, baby? Ready. And then Letty goes, ready. Like she says it like the most cringy way possible. Like me and Emma like looked at each other and like we're like, what was that? Like what in the world was that? Was she like like was it an off take or something? I don't know, but yeah, where were the other two? Yeah, totally. I don't know. There's just another movie or another part in the movie where it just kind of felt like disingenuous a little bit to me. Mikey, do you have anything else you want to say? Really?
Skip this one if you want.
Yeah, yeah. Is it already that time to start scoring this bad boy a little bit?
I don't know. My wife had a good point. Like when we watched it together, and she's like, "You realize this is the last one that actually has a good ending, like a happy ending, like because we know how the next one ends, and we don't know how the next after that ends. So I don't know, because it's all downhill from here."
Yeah.
Emotion wise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Fast 7, and then we have Fast 8. Have you not seen Fast 8?
No, I have, but it's still like just sad.
Yeah.
I don't know, for me.
I don't remember anything about it, so we'll have to just wait.
Oh, really?
I think I know what you're getting at. It is kind of sad. Like
yeah.
Sad.
Yeah. Well,
7 is definitely the emotional low point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and we'll obviously get into that more, as we review the next one. So obviously, we have Fast 7 coming up, and I guess, guys, that's been our review of Fast and Furious 6, if that's all we have to say, pretty much, because I didn't have a lot of notes, to really talk about, but that, it is what it is. That's been our review. We're gonna score it in a minute. Obviously, we have Fast 7 and Fast 8 coming up, and then we're gonna. None of us have seen Hobbs and Shaw, so maybe I'm weirdly looking forward to that one. Weirdly, I'm ready for this to change up a little bit because I'm kind of, it's starting to get old, and I don't know. It is what it is. I hope the listener's not getting sick of us talking about it because I feel like all we do is rip on it. But there's good qualities, obviously, and I still think these movies are worth watching. But you can look forward to that. Yeah. So coming to a score for Fast and Furious 6, Caleb, what are you gonna give it?
You guys are going to hate me for saying this because you're going to think this is outrageously high, and probably the listeners will too. I'm giving this movie an 8. So, yeah, it has a lot of faults, and it's by far not a perfect movie, but dang, is it entertaining. And sure, it's definitely not the most entertaining in the series, but I still think I'm probably more likely to watch this one than the fourth one or probably the second one. Sorry, Mikey. It's just, there's things about it that they're just really entertaining, and it is junk food in its purest form. It's like a chocolate fountain and not perfect, but it's good. And I'll leave it at that.
Well said. That's very concise. I appreciate that. Mikey, you go for it.
Well, you gave the last one a 9, so I was hoping you didn't rate this one higher. I don't know. Like, this is the first one I've skipped like a good chunk, like, of the movie. But I still like it better than the last one. So I gave the last one a 6, so I'll probably give this one like a 6.5.
Okay.
Because I don't know, I was more entertained with this one because a lot more of the acting was better. A lot of the action was better. Some of it was not believable, obviously, with a lot of the nitpicks we had. But I don't know, there was something about it that I just liked. I liked more. I liked the ending more, and so I'll probably give it a 6.5. Honestly.
Okay. Well, my turn. This is the first Fast and the Furious movie where I haven't had fun watching it. I've seen some of the action. It's like I'm like, I can acknowledge, like, yeah, it's entertaining. It stops feeling like Fast and Furious here for me. And that's a huge thing because I feel like Fast and Furious gives a very distinct flavor. And while we do get like sprinkles of that in this movie, I feel like a big chunk of the heart is missing and it just stops feeling right. So Fast and Furious 6 gets a 6 from me, which I think is probably the lowest one I've given. And you know that's based purely off of just enjoyment level. And it sucks because this is probably my favorite villain in the franchise so far. But there's so many things that just do not land for me, and I have there aren't things that are just overtly bad that are big things, because obviously it is kind of like his, like it's junk food. Like the tank scene, that's cool. The chemistry between Brian and Dom and Letty, as we had talked about before, that stops feeling right. And I feel like we don't even really get a lot of Brian in this movie. It's kind of what it feels like. It feels like we get a lot more of the other characters than really the core cast that we had focused on in the beginning. So I don't know. I feel like, as usual, like kind of, I guess I'm siding more with Mikey on this one, but yeah, I mean, a 6 just feels right to give it as far as like enjoyment. And that has nothing to do with, you know, how anyone else feels about it, guys. And I'm not saying, Caleb, you're wrong for thinking it's great, because there's a lot of things that people are going to love about it. But for me personally, I got to go with my gut, 6 out of 10. So there's that. But that doesn't mean, I feel like it'd be a perfect one. Like if it was on in the background while I'm editing, or like I'm trying to do something, and you know, if it kind of very much falls under the same line of Fast 2, like it doesn't really do a lot for me. There's things that I do like about it, but overall, you know, I'm not going to choose to put this one on. So there's that. But ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to The Wannabe Critic. Sorry to bring it down a little bit at the end of this review, but you got to do what you got to do. I liked Caleb's optimism in this one. I really liked Caleb's review, because it was like, you know, happy-go-lucky. Like that was probably the right thing to say. And it can be kind of hard whenever stuff starts feeling, you know, things feel right, and then all of a sudden they don't. And I think I'm feeling a lot of what people felt whenever they watched the new Star Wars movies. Is kind of what the only like comparison I could give it. I feel like that's kind of what's happening. It's like, yeah, it's Fast and Furious, but it's really not, you know. So I don't know. I feel like this is the biggest heist movie we've had so far, kind of like what Mikey said. I really liked that. But gentlemen, this has been a good review. I really appreciate your time as usual. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be reviewing Fast 7, then Fast 8, and then Hobbs and Shaw. And then once the new movie comes out, no matter what we're doing, we will actually take a weekend or, you know, a time to review that one as well. You know, we have a schedule we stick to, but, you know, there's no telling when the new movie is going to come out. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to write in and, you know, express your thoughts about the show or anything, you can email us at geeklybiweekly1@gmail.com. You can follow us on all social media platforms at The Wannabe Critic. Make sure you go into your Spotify and Apple podcast feeds and go check out Game Club, Storytime, a Star Wars podcast, as well as A Guy and His Wife if you want some different flavors in true wannabe fashion. Caleb, where can they find you? Do you want them to find you? What's you know?
Yeah, so Twitter's probably the best place to find me at. I'm at Chief in NY18, so you can follow me there. So yeah, just check me out there.
There you go. There you go, ladies and gents. And Mikey, who had probably the most to say on this particular episode, which I usually say no one cares what you have to say, but I think that's probably wrong. As far if someone came across this one, I'd be glad that they had heard most of your voice in this one. So that was good. Do you want people to be able to find you? I mean, what's going on with that? You set up the socials yet, or what?
Dude, I set up the socials and immediately deleted them.
Seriously?
I was like, toxic deuces, and deleted all of it.
All right. Well, if you want to get a hold of Mikey, if you want to question Mikey,
You can't.
You can email me at geeklybiweekly1@gmail.com, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us here at The Wannabe Critic. We appreciate all the support. We appreciate you guys listening. If you made it this far, definitely, you know, stick around. We do a lot of stuff around here. And also, we want to thank you for preparing yourselves for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be The Wannabe Critic. Caleb, say goodbye.
We'll see you guys.
Say goodbye, Mikey.
Bye.